Our entire world runs on this incredible system of massive, invisible arteries. I'm talking about the shipping lanes that carry literally everything from the phone in your hand to the gas in your car. But what happens when one of the most critical of these arteries, a real choke point for global trade, starts to get, well, clogged up? Okay, so what you're looking at here are these superhighways of the sea. And see that super narrow channel right there between Malaysia and Sumatra? That's the Malacca Strait. For hundreds of years, it's been the one indispensable shortcut connecting the Indian and Pacific Oceans. It's the artery that a huge chunk of all global trade flows through. I know. I just called it a shortcut. But what if there was a shortcut for the shortcut? A way to just bypass this increasingly crowded maritime highway altogether. So you might be asking, why would anyone spend billions of dollars trying to build an alternative? Well, because the Malacca Strait isn't just some line on a map. It's a real physical waterway with some very real and very costly limitations. The strait itself is a huge challenge. It's shaped like a funnel, and it gets dangerously narrow. For the massive supertankers we have today, a depth of just 23 meters leaves pretty much zero room for error. And when you add in all that heavy traffic, underwater sand waves, and even old shipwrecks just sitting on the seabed, you've got a recipe for a logistical nightmare. And you know what happens when you have a great choke point, right? You get a great gatekeeper. And sitting right at the mouth of the Malacca Strait is the undisputed hub of global shipping, a nation whose entire success story is tied to this very waterway, Singapore. To really put Singapore's dominance into perspective, just think about this number. In 2024, the total tonnage of ships just arriving there hit a record 3.11 billion. And that's not the weight of the stuff they're carrying, that's the weight of the ships themselves. It's just a constant, almost unimaginable parade of steel. So what were all those ships carrying? A staggering 41 million standard shipping containers. I mean, if you lined all of those up, end to end, they would circle the entire planet more than 6 times. But here's the most important part. About 90% of that traffic isn't even for Singapore. It's all transshipment. Basically, cargo comes in on a huge ship, gets unloaded, and then reloaded onto smaller ships that are heading to other ports. Singapore isn't just a destination, it's the world's biggest sorting facility for global trade. But that kind of dominance, it makes other countries look at the map and ask, what is? And for decades, Thailand has been looking at its own narrow strip of land, dreaming of this incredibly ambitious project that could completely reshape the flow of trade. And this isn't some new idea they just cooked up. The concept of cutting across this piece of land goes back over 150 years, originally as a canal. The technology has changed, of course, but the ambition, that core idea, has always been the same: create a new path. So instead of a canal, the modern plan is for a land bridge. The idea is to build 2 massive deep-sea ports, one on the west coast in the Andaman Sea and another on the east coast in the Gulf of Thailand. And then you connect them with a state-of-the-art road and rail network. Okay, so how would this land bridge thing actually work? It sounds pretty simple, but the logistics are just a massive undertaking. But it's one that's been successfully tested in other parts of the world. At its heart, it's what's called a sea-land system. You basically replace a long, winding sea journey with a short, direct sprint over land. So a ship from Europe docks on the west coast, its containers get loaded onto a train, and just a few hours later, they're on the east coast ready to be loaded onto another ship for the next leg of their journey. The flow is meant to be totally seamless. Cargo arrives by sea, zips across the land, and then departs by sea. It's what we call intermodal transport, but on a grand scale. And it's designed for one specific purpose: to cut out that long trip south around Singapore. And this is a proven logistical model. The U.S. has been using land bridges for decades to compete with the Panama Canal. Mexico is actually reviving a very similar project right now for the same reason. So this isn't just a theory, it's established practice. So this all sets up a really fascinating showdown. It's a classic battle: the established, dominant route versus the ambitious and potentially much faster challenger. So how do they really stack up? It really all comes down to a fundamental trade-off. The land bridge promises to shave 2 to 3 days off a ship's journey, which in logistics is a huge saving. But, and this is a big but, Every single container has to be unloaded, moved across the country, and then reloaded. That's called double handling, and it costs time and money. The entire project's success really depends on one question. Is the time saved at sea worth the extra cost on land? What's really incredible is that the stakes were this clear decades ago. A thesis from way back in 1985 predicted that if this bridge were ever built, it would become a vital element in the global transport chain. They saw its potential to be more than just an alternative, but like a fundamental piece of the whole puzzle.
So if this project actually succeeds, it wouldn't just be a win for Thailand. It would fundamentally redraw the maritime map of Southeast Asia. It would create new winners and, well, pose a pretty major challenge to the longtime champion.
For Thailand, the potential payoff is absolutely immense. We're talking about 2 new world-class ports, thousands and thousands of jobs, and a massive boom in industrial development in the south of the country. It would completely transform Thailand into a primary gateway for global trade. And for Singapore, the impact could be profound. As one analysis put it, its economy depends essentially on the circulation of ships through the straits. So if this land bridge were to siphon off even 10 or 20% of that traffic, it would pose a direct and serious challenge to the city-state's entire economic model. And that leaves us with the big question. This is a project with enormous potential and, well, equally enormous hurdles. The costs are astronomical, the logistics are incredibly complex, but the prize is a chance to reshape the very flow of global commerce. So will this centuries-old dream finally become a reality?